Okay, hi, brothers and sisters. We're here finally for our wisdom study. We're gonna read online. I have the book before me too, with the next 4 chapters. We're just gonna blister through chapter 1. I really have my notes on 14 and 15. 16 may be one that we kind of go through and just kind of use our memory. We'll see how badly that goes. and I didn't recap. You should know I didn't recap. I made a video this morning, and I've been a little tired today. Anyway, so I didn't go in and recap. I'm sorry. I didn't do that. But here we go. We will go into chapter 13, and we'll just simply blister through this. We'll read through it pretty quick, and then we're gonna try to use it to reference back in if we can. Okay? So this is Wisdom chapter 3. This is considered the New Revised Standard Version Catholic edition. I don't really know the one that I have here. Yeah, it doesn't really tell me. I just know that it is different. I don't know if this is the original because it has more of the old language in it, where I'm going to pick up catch some of the phrases that is actually used in the King James Bible, which helps to draw your mind to other passages if you're used to the King James Version. So, Wisdom chapter 13. The title here is called The Foolishness of Nature Worship. Now, I keep talking about elemental power, and, they can say the foolishness of, nature worship. We were to take care of the creation that we were gave, and yeah, we weren't to worship it. So in that sense, it is the foolishness of nature worship. And what it really come down to was making idols, first of animals and then of people. And so in that sense, it really did become a foolish worship. Instead of following the way of God and all this stuff, you weren't to, you know, worship, this power that, you think you're going to come in control of. You were to use that power to do good, and so you weren't to worship in this sense. And but it did get transposed into nature worship in a sense. So Wisdom chapter 13, the foolishness of nature worship. For all people who are ignorant of God, oh, give me a second here. Okay. Okay, let's begin again. The foolishness of nature worship. For all people who are ignorant of God, doesn't say of him, it says of God, we're foolish by nature. They'll soon start throwing the he pronoun around all over the place again, but we're not going to do that. And they were unable from the good things that are seen to know the one who exists. Because if they were able, they wouldn't be cutting up all the foolishness that they're cutting up today. So obviously, they can't see God, right? For all people who were ignorant of God were foolish by nature, and they were unable from the good things that are seen to know the one who exists, nor did they recognize the artisan while paying heed to his works. No, we're going to say we could say their work, but because she's been the creator denied from the beginning, we're going to say her works, and it is her works. It does specify once you get your genders playing out as male and feminine and understand their parts, you understand she is the creator and the maker of the clay, the potter, the maker, and the creator are 3 of her titles. And as such, she is also adhered to as the Almighty. Now, again, we speculate that that also is part of the makeup of religion, all right? We were not to really be worshiping each other. We were to be obedient out of love to one another. One was not over the other. It is laws of equality that comes from, if you want to say a Godhead, from our Godhead. It was not one over the other. And one of the ladies, I even wrote her name down, made a really good comment about equality. Where is it? I have it here somewhere. Well, I thought I did. Okay, it's over here. And it was by a Jane Smith. This was the channel name, and it had a number on the end of it. It said, she says, we are equal to men. We never claim to be identical to them, and we certainly aren't. It always amazes me how many men conflate equal with identical. I'm not identical to a man. I'm very different. And I have very different purpose in the earth. It doesn't mean that you have the right to take away my right to equality. to the equality of all the good things in this world that you think you're entitled to and I'm not. I never said I was identical to you. I never ever did say that. But I say I am equal to you. And I'm entitled to equality under the law, as are children. And so they did not or pay heed to her work. But they supposed that either fire or wind or swift air or the circle of the stars or turbulent water or the luminaries of heaven were the gods that rule the world. And so we do. We even get this in religion, right? They'll say, he's the sun and she's just the moon. And they love to play out that male is high, male is high, male is God. And they'll use the luminaries. They'll say he's the bright and morning star, he's planet Venus, but he's also the great Jupiter. And so they have all of this. And we get that in the Bible. So we see a mixing of the word of truth and lies in the Bible. Because in Isaiah 22, she says, why have you gone up to your rooftop to worship the hosts of heaven? Haven't I kept you safe? I have kept you safe. And yet they began to worship in idolatry and began to make idols of, in particularly, males over time. But they suppose that either fire, wind, or swift air, or the circle of the stars, or turbulent water, or the luminaries of heaven were the gods that rule the world. If through delight in the beauty of these things people assume them to be God, let them know how much better than these is their Lord. For the author of the beauty created them. And that's wisdom. We're told it's wisdom. And if people were amazed at their power in working, let them perceive from them how much more powerful is the one who formed them. For from the greatness and beauty of created things comes a corresponding perception of their creator. And we see that. God says, you are without excuse not to understand the Godhead. I am manifested in what I created for your eyes to bear witness to. So, before we got off track, with all the foolishness that comes into this religion, the simple fact is there was male and female made in God's image. And then the men took it upon themselves to suggest to you that that's one male. Father, I'm not made in my father's image. I'm made in my mother's. Hello. They said, let us make them in our image. That's male and female. And she is the life giver. She's the creator. You can't see that in the earth. If that's not the truth, then God's a liar. That's what that would suggest to me, that God's a big fat liar. No, what it really, when you're able to reason, we know man's a big fat liar and created a religious lie that revolved all around him and empowered him and weakened her. That's right. And that's what makes sense. And if people were amazed at their power working, let them perceive from then how much more powerful is the one who formed them. For from the greatness and beauty of created things comes a corresponding perception of their creator. Yet these people are little to be blamed, for perhaps they go astray while seeking God and desiring to find God. They got him. No, it's she that you don't know. You won't even seek her. You won't even suggest that she's the life giver. I mean, it's quite funny. For while they live among her works, they keep searching. And they trust in what they see because the things that are seen are beautiful. Yet again, not even they are to be excused. For if they had the power to know so much that they could investigate the world, how did they fail to find sooner the Lord of these things? Because they didn't want to. They really didn't want to. They're great manipulators, is what they are. The foolishness of idolatry. That's idol worship, all right? But miserable with their hopes set on dead things. Now here we're going to begin to see how the evolution of an idol comes into manifestation in this world and how we begin to leave behind the knowledge and understanding of those histories of where all those idols come from and just not even really bother to investigate, as it suggests that if we were truly interested in pursuing the truth of all this beauty that God has provided for us to bear witness to, then we would be pursuing where that really come from. And instead we just decide not to, and we just leave it all behind us. But miserable with their hopes set on dead things are those who give the name gods to the works of their human hands, gold and silver fashioned with skills and in the likenesses of animal, or a useless stone, the work of an ancient. hand. A skilled woodcutter may saw down a tree easy to handle and skillfully strip off all its bark. This takes us to Jeremiah, reference in Jeremiah. And then with pleasing workmanship, make a useful vessel that serves life's needs. And burn the cast-off pieces of his work to prepare his food and eat his fill. But a cast-off piece from among them, useful for nothing, a stick crooked and full of knots, he takes and carves with care in his leisure and shapes it with skill gained in idleness. He forms it in the likeness of a human being. More precisely, they tend to shape them in the form of a man, because they really were in love with themselves from the beginning. We see the accusation from Adam absolutely proving to us that he really did not agree to this covenant. He perjured himself when he said, oh yeah, I'll take her an oath. I'll follow the way of God. I'll follow the laws that comes off her tongue. And then he turned on that covenant. Now that's what we see him doing. That's what we recognized when we went back in history and we actually studied through the generations and ages. And we have to use wisdom to be able to provide those answers to us. She is real. She did provide them. And then so he carves this piece of wood, naughty wood, that's not even a great piece of wood, into a worthless human being, or into the likeness of a human being rather, and make it like some worthless animal, giving it a coat of red paint, coloring its surface red, and covering every blemish in it with paint. Then he makes a suitable niche for it and sets it in the wall and fastens it there with iron. Well, he fastens it there because it can't stay there itself, of course. He takes thought for it so that it may not fall, because he knows that it cannot help itself. For it is only an image and has need of help. That's just like the image of Jesus. Why do you think there's so many men on the pulpit preaching Jesus and helping the image out? Helping the image to have been resurrected, helping the image to have manifested all these miracles when nobody alive here today has ever borne witness to any of this. They just tell us it's historical accounts, and these men keep harping at a man called Jesus who was resurrected from the dead and how he performed so many miracles, and that's what the false prophet does. The false prophet keeps giving worship unto this idol, to this false image. And we're told that. And that's what's going on. It's been going on for a very long time. So when he prays about possessions in his marriage and children, so let's go back. He takes thought for it so that it may not fall, because he knows that it cannot help itself. For it is only an image, and it has need of help. And indeed it does. And they paint that image all over the place. When he prays about possessions in his marriage and children. Now, interestingly, he's the one praying to this idol. He's the one praying about marriage and children, right? Because he's hoping to get the answers he wants. And since it's just an image of a man that he's calling God, he's definitely going to get the answers that he wants, because he's going to create those answers. So when he prays about possessions in his marriage and children, he is not ashamed to address a lifeless thing, and they continue to do this. For help, he appeals to a thing that is weak. For life, he prays to a thing that is dead. For aid, he entreats a thing that is utterly inexperienced. For a prosperous journey, a thing that cannot take a step. For money-making and work and success with his hands, he asks strength of a thing whose hands have no strength. Meanwhile, his partner, the other half of this covenant, he totally appears to ignore while going to a block of wood for assistance and then walking away with all of his own made-up answers. That's really what this comes down to. So that's the end reading of chapter 13. So like I said, we were going to blow through that. So I do have, I think these are 14s. Oh, there's the beginning of chapter 14. So yeah, and in verse 13 of that, I had said God's image is not the image of a man. They just make this image of a man, call it God. because they really have so little respect for her that they wouldn't concede of make. Now, over time, understand, we know that they did in order to tear her rights down. It was all part of the process of tearing her rights down. We know in the beginning there was female representation and male representations of gods. But we know over time that his come to be at the forefront of it all because these kings over time tore her image down and then said, hey, you can come worship at our image. And that's just what took place in the earth. And we see that all referenced in Daniel 2 with the kings building this male idol up over a series of kingdoms. And you can't reason that out. You believe male is God, God, God. And every time you Google it to the machine, to the AI, it'll say he. Now, who programmed the stupid thing? It was not God. It was man that programmed that. Just like he tore her image down and got her down at his feet. So they call the image of a man God. Right? They're so arrogant in everything that they pursue about themselves. Well, me. It's got to be me. I'm the epitome of God. I heard men say that. Where I used to tend to say, well, one of them actually had the nerve to say, we're the epitome of God. Well, not women. He literally tagged that on behind it. Behind that saying, and when he said it, it just bing. It was like, I'm not. You're the epitome, huh? You are. There's something wrong with that brain that dares say that dares promote that. There is. I'm made in God's image, and that is not a father. It is a mother. And there happens to be male and female, but 50-50. And the men are suggesting to us that God is he, and all male. Yeah, and that makes sense in the tiny brains of men. I don't know about the women. Come on, girls, wake up. So, verse 17, who's praying to this image of a man if it is not a man? Now, it states it was a man who made the image and then began to pray to it. Instead of going to his other half and saying, hey, hon, what do we think about this? He went to the idol and he said, what do you think about this? And then he made his answers up and he come back and he left her right out of the equation. Except for how he could subjugate her under him and take her goods from her. That's really what he did. So who's praying to this image of a man if it is not male himself? He prays about his goods, his wife, and his children. She's not going to this image. Not at this point. So chapter 14. Folly of a navigator praying to an idol. So let's watch this. Who's steering the ship? Who's following the star to guide the ship home and into port? Well, he's praying to an idol. It's not going to work. So, verse 1, again, one preparing to sail and about to voyage over raging waves calls upon a piece of wood more fragile than the ship that carries him. So I'm just going to check here. Yeah, so I think that's over here. Just 1 second while I catch up to the chapter men in this book. Yeah. So it says, for it was desire for gain that planned that vessel, and wisdom was the artisan who built it. And she did. So for verily desire of gain devised that, and the workman built it by his skill. Oh, he did he? He did everything. See, that takes us straight back to Nebuchadnezzar and why he became a beast for 7 years. He became a beast. He lost the thinking of his mind when he put his hands out over his own kingdom and said, why alone made and created all of these things? You don't get how that's a slander and a defile and a blaspheme against the Holy Spirit called your wife in the land? And you can say, no, it doesn't say that. Yes, it does. It says it in Malachi 2 once you get your reasoning out and you put your male in the right place and you put your female in the right place. But you got to use wisdom to do that. And they don't want to do that. They want to go to an idol and pray to his idol that he made in his own image and come back with his own answers that really, really he likes the sound of them. And that's what it's telling you he did. So for it was desire for gain that planned that vessel, and wisdom was the artisan who built it. Okay, so the plan for gain, right? and wisdom was the artisan. But it is your providence, O mother, that steers its course, because you have given it a path in the sea. And the providence that belonged to her was through her presence, right? That's who was guiding this ship. And it got off course when the men rejected the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and began to blaspheme her and turn to an idol built by their own bloody hands. And it was bloody hands that made it. But it is your providence, O mother, that steers its course, because you have given it a path in the sea and a safe way through the waves, showing that you can save from every danger, so that even a person who lacks skill may put to sea. So there's safety and wisdom, as well is your understanding here, that as long as you are listening to wisdom, though you lack skill, even to guide the ship, in a sense, lack the skill in it, or you may put to sea and she'll guide you through it. But you have to be hearkening to her. It is your will that works of your wisdom should not be without effect. Now, let me see where my next, okay. So we keep reading. That not be without effect. Therefore, people trust their lives even to the smallest piece of wood, and passing through the billows on a raft, they come safely to land. For even in the beginning, when arrogant giants, now I don't think giants necessarily means huge people, although we see the ritual play out in aspect, these giants exist. I think it's a reference to giant government systems that were here in the beginning before they were took out of existence, in a sense. But in the end, we see the seven-headed dragon, right? And it's representative of a giant beast system. It's animalistic in nature. It breathes fire. And again, we come back to nature worship, idol worship, folly. All of it is folly. For even in the beginning, when arrogant giants were perishing, the hope of the world took refuge on a raft, and guided by your hand left to the world the seed of a new generation. So there's a lot in that, and I'm not going to explore it, but that's quite loaded, isn't it? I don't know. When you look out there amongst the stars, you've got to know that we are not alone. God says, I'll fill the heavens with your seed. Well, what does that mean if that doesn't mean that those planets out there can support life, or could at one time? So the raft here that may have landed with the seed for a new generation was the beginning of the establishment of mankind on earth, womankind on earth. I believe mankind was here first. Then she is sent in covenant to write the laws. The government should have been established by that time, or at least her house should have been established in that time. And I think they played along in this folly, knowing that they needed her. And once she got here, then they turn on her, and they begin to blaspheme her and gnash upon these women and take the spirit of the covenant of the land. Now they say, well, where do you get that from? Well, again, you get it in Job 31. He says, I made a covenant with my eyes. I made an agreement with this woman that came from above, from mother's house, her mother's house, made in her mother's image. Now, I made an agreement. I made an oath with her. I took an oath to her mother. That would be God in the heavens. That's how we're going to have to go with it, because that's how it's defined. And I agreed to take her an oath, and by extension, her law. And I turned on that. But Job says, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above? We know that is the Spirit. The Holy Spirit gave in covenant to man to teach him the laws of heaven. I don't know what's so hard to understand about that, other than the fact that we have men so arrogant as to believe nothing feminine is good enough to even come to resemble God like a male can. Well, that's just stupid arrogance. God says, I am spirit, and you worship me in spirit. It's not form that you worship me in. That's why you were to make no image. You are both made in my image, in God's image, male and female. But the men took the female one down, saying, hey, We don't have to uphold this covenant. We don't. Not realizing what it was going to lead to, which was their ultimate end in their death and trapped in the womb of Sheol where they are now. Showing that you can save from every danger. Okay. For even in the beginning, when arrogant giants were perishing, the hope of the world took refuge on a raft. Now they're going to tell you this is Noah, right? And so we got a double play here. And guided by your hand left to the world the seed of a new generation. So we can go to the beginning, and then we can go back to this new point of a restart. For blessed is the wood by which righteousness comes. Now they'll tell you it was the seed of one righteous man because, frig you, woman, it didn't really matter her condition. Who cares? And yet it is the woman's seed that preserved mankind. It is Israel, the woman's seed that preserved us. So you can say a man and his pure generations and all this bullcrap that you want to put in there, but you would have nothing without the righteous women that agreed to carry this burden upon them. So, verse 8, but the idol made with hands is accursed, and so is the one who made it. He, for having made it, and the perishable thing, because it was named a god. So this hunk of wood, which was made in the image of man, by a man, condemns him. He's condemned by what he made. For equally hateful to God are the ungodly and their ungodliness, which is what this idol has led to. An ungodly law fed off of man's tongue and subjugated the world under him and his greed and his violence. It's called a beast system. For what was done will be punished together with the one who did it. Therefore, there will be a visitation also upon the heathen idols, because though part of what God created, they became an abomination, snares for human souls, and a trap for the feet of the foolish. So we speak of the ditch, we speak of the snare that they laid for her to fall into. They eventually have fallen into it themselves. And the females that we're looking at here is the new branch that God pulls out, who apparently did come from the old branch. And she says to him, I will choose you out again. That is in the Bible. And so she's talking about the original daughters that were sent to teach the laws of heaven that man rejected. The origins and evils of adultery. So, 9, verse 9, I had this on it, so let's go back. Sorry, I forgot to stop. For equally hateful to God are the ungodly and their ungodliness, for what was done will be punished together with the one who did it. So, 9, hateful to God. God's right hand called God was the camp of Mahanaim. We'll keep going over this. Camp of God, Jacob wrestling with her to steal her birthright, indicates hatefulness to God's way. And it was. It was absolute hatefulness. Verse 11, bringing in the gods of the Gentiles. Creation groaneth for the birthing of the daughters of God. And it does. And I meant to actually go hunting that up, and I didn't. That's in the New Testament. And they'll say, for creation groaneth for the sons of God. No, creation is groaning for the birth of the daughters. So that is found. That doesn't really say where it's found. Right there. It is Romans 8, verse 19. This is where, for the creation waits in eager expectation, okay, for the children of God to be revealed. All right, for the true children of God to be revealed, those who will uphold this covenant of truth. All right, not the religious lies in an idol. You were to have no idol before you, neither male nor female, nor animal. That's what Deuteronomy 4 said. All of us, and God says, you didn't want me, you wanted a king. And now at the end, you've got a male idol standing right before you, the one identified in Daniel 2, that all the kings of the world built up so they could play God because it appealed to them. And they knew they could subjugate the spirit in the land. And you have a king. All of a sudden, now God is a king. God says, you didn't want me. You wanted a king. You can't get that through your head. God is not a king. And you can use Revelations, we will be appointed kings and priests. Again, there we go with nothing but male in your understanding. It's futile. It's futile to argue with the wicked because they don't want to see fairness. That's the least. They don't want to see the truth. They don't want to understand it. They don't want to take the time. They get mad and the gloves come off and they fight really dirty because men are really good at fighting dirty. And you know what? Quite frankly, so ain't the harlots. I consider that our present sufferings are not comparable to the glory that will be revealed unto us. The creation waits in eager expectation for the revelations, not of the sons, but finally of the daughters of God. And that's the first fruits come out of the land. We see that in Revelations 11. It is mother's scepter known as her right hand. She is Shiloh, the scepter, right? Shall not depart from between Judah's feet until Shiloh comes. That's the new branch. That's the scepter. For the creation was subject to futility, but not by its own will. So what's the actual creation here? It's female. It's the women. But because of the one who subjected it in hope. Who subjected it in hope? Well, that would be wisdom. She's testing her daughters. She's testing her sons. This is kind of your understanding here. Now, I'm flying through this. I know there's a lot more in there, and I apologize for not being as thorough as I should be and could be. The evening that I sat and wrote these down, I had a lot more going on in my mind. I'm sorry, I'm tired today. And it kind of slows, some of picking up the verses that I would normally pick up. I'm just not quick to pick them up like I should. So we were, where were we? Okay, so I had backtracked to 9 and 11. Therefore, there will be a visitation. Okay, but the idol made with hands. Okay, but the idol made with hands is accursed, and so is the one who made it. He for having made it, and the perishable thing because it was named a god. For equally hateful to God are the ungodly and their ungodliness. And that was proven to be Adam, who agreed to a covenant and then turned on it and stabbed her in the back. Now, we link Satan's name, Beelzebub, straight back to Baal, your husband, and straight back to Adam, the accuser in the garden, who accused the righteous spirit from the beginning of a lot of hateful things, claiming she did this and she did that. And she says, in Psalm 69, and there's several other passages where she says it. She says, they lay accusations to my charge, and I don't even know where they're getting these made-up charges from. I don't know why they would do it. Actually, I think it may be in, let me just go here, Psalm 50. And we know it's the dove speaking here, the Holy Spirit, she, speaking in this passage, just by simply reasoning the text out. This is one of them that really you can pick it up in strongly. So Psalm 50. Okay. So a Psalm of Asaph, that's your gatherer. It's also a word that links to your Koheleth in Ecclesiastes 12. We keep harping at this, but this is your little book sealed up of the truth of the divine feminine that was denied. So the mighty God, even the Lord, had spoken and called the earth from the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God hath shined. So God says, would that there was a fire that would come out of Zion. God's waiting for the fierceness of these daughters to stand up for their case, to stand up for their cause. Our God shall come and shall not keep silence. She says, long time have I held my peace. Now will I go forth as a travailing woman, and I will destroy and devour at once. I will lead you in pathways that you have not known. That is the presence of God identified right there, leading you in pathways that you have not known. She says, the waters come over. That's the admixture of doctrine, the Red Sea, the wine. After she parted the water, the presence of God, and she said, you did not see my footsteps. And it was by intent that you did not see them. And we see Pharaoh muddy in her waters. So our God shall come and shall not keep silence. The fire shall devour before her, and it shall be very tempestuous round about her. That's right. Because she's angry. It is her indignation. She shall call to the heavens from above and to the earth, that she may judge her people. She is the judge. It says they struck the judge upon the cheek, and that's identified as daughter Zion in Micah chapter 5, verse 1. So gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. And the heavens shall declare her righteousness, for God is judge herself. Hear, O my people, and I will speak, O Israel, and I will testify against thee. I am God, even thy God, the one that you deny. I am the presence of God on earth. She was a camp of Mahanaim, and Jacob wrestled with her to remove her sphere of authority from her, and he stole her name. That's right. I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices or for thy burnt offerings. We did a video on this. Yes, she does. She absolutely did so. Reprove them for their sacrifices and their burnt offerings that had been continually before her. I will take no bullocks out of your house, nor he-goats out of your folds. We understand why, don't we? If not, you'll have to pour through some of my videos until you get it figured out. This takes us back to the Genesis 15:9 covenant. Because he turned on her. God says, I will reprove you, because I'm taking no bullocks out of your house or he-goats out of your fold. I want nothing to do with your sacrifices, nothing to do with your offerings. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. I know all the fowls of the mountain, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine, and the fullness thereof. She is talking about it as belonging to her. And I think there's a representation of Mother Earth encompassed in that. Will I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? I don't think so. Offer unto God thanksgiving. Be thankful. Don't be offering up bloodshed to me. I ask no blood of you. And if I were hungry, I certainly wouldn't come to you, because I own everything. I don't need your permission. Will I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? This is idol worship that comes straight out of the land of idolatry, Egypt, that muddied her waters. Offer unto God a thanksgiving and pay thy vows unto the Most High. What's the vow? The oath that you took to uphold her covenant of truth. Now that's the oath he was to uphold. That's the oath she did uphold until they wiped her out. She says, you divided my pleasant land. And then she, the righteous spirit, whom my covenant was found with, became the outcast that none of you men sought a covenant with, and you still don't today. And call upon me in the day of trouble. Call upon me. Those that have made a covenant of sacrifice and have kept my oath, and I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. But unto the wicked God says, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes? Or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth. And she promises this group that thinks the branch is coming out of them. She says, oh, the branch ain't coming out of you. I'll take a new branch. I'll take a new branch, and it ain't coming out of you. I think she says that in Micah chapter 2. She says, I won't take a branch out of you, out of that flock that bows to these idols and went against my covenant. And has not made a covenant with me, has not upheld my oath of truth, couldn't be bothered to even go searching for it. What right do you have to declare my statutes? Especially the men who's on the pulpit declaring what God says when God sent them not. God says, I sent you not, yet you ran. Jeremiah 23. And then you began to prophesy the burden of the Lord, the burden of the Lord. And the burden of the Lord was the deliverance of children into life. And the men were taking that role over and saying, well, we'll deliver the children. It's he, God. He's prophesying to us. She said, I did not send you, yet you ran. And you began to prophesy the burden of the Lord, the burden of the Lord. She said, you keep doing it. And she said, you'll be no burden to me because I will not deliver you. So what right do you have to declare my statutes? You have none. Those statutes were to be found on my daughters' tongue that I gave you in covenant as the holy ones, that you blasphemed in the earth. So what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in your mouth? Seeing thou hatest instruction and castest my words behind thee. Whose instructions did you cast behind you and wouldn't listen to? Wisdom. She tells you this in Proverbs 1. And when you do that, she says, I will mock you in the day of your calamity. And in Psalm 2, she says, this day have I begotten my firstborn daughter. When she restores her back, and she says, I'll send my rod of iron. Yeah, there's intent there. There's anger there. There's indignation there. And it's wisdom that's talking here. Seeing that you have cast instruction, castest my words behind you. When thou sawest a thief, then you consentest with him, and you have been partakers with adulterers. That's idol worshippers. And that's both male and female in context here. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit. Thou sittest and speakest against thy own sister. You slandered your own. It's got mother here. It's got son. It's not a son that got slandered. It was the daughter that he slandered and accused in the beginning. And that was Satan, Baal, husband, Adam, the accuser, who promised to take her in oath. Oh no, we'll follow that. And then he perjured himself in the courts of heaven and said, oh no, she played the harlot. No. She don't want your law, mother. No. She didn't uphold your law. She told us she wanted us to do it. These things you have done, and I kept silence. Long time have I held my peace. You thought I was a man just like you. You thought I was altogether such as one as thyself. But I will reprove you and set the case in order before your very eyes. Now consider this, you that forget God, lest I tear you in pieces, and there be none to deliver. So these are the lioness that rises up out of the lands of the Gentiles, truly. And God says, none can be saved from these mighty ones. Whosoever offereth praise glorifieth me, and to her and him that ordereth their conversation aright will I show the true salvation of God unto. I was actually looking for 55 now. So sorry about that. And we'll go to 55 first before we backtrack to wisdom again. So 55, this is where we find the dove and the female and the male. It's not two men talking here, but you read all your commentary and men are again, so sure, it's all about them. To the chief musician on Neganoth Maskil, a psalm of David. I think it was a psalm of the Holy One. It was a psalm of the rejected one. It was a song of the one that they were blaspheming, who sat between the cherubims. And she says, the children have come to the birth, and there is not strength to deliver, because he decided to turn on my covenant. So give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not thyself from my supplication. Attend unto me, and hear me. I mourn in my complaint and make a noise. So to go into deep mourning has the idea of to be darkened as well. To not only be darkened in the spirit, but then in symbology, in a ritualistic manner, we see the Shulamite. She says, look not upon me, because the false light has shone upon me and made me black. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard have I not kept. So attend unto me and hear me. I mourn, I go black in my complaint, and I make a noise because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked, for they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. So we see Baal, actually the word is Baal, firing arrows off of this wicked covenant. Arrows is symbology of your teeth as a gnashing, threshing instrument of words that gnashed upon her to take her spirit out of the land. And so they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. And I've hit multiple verses where God says, you hated me. And it's always in reference with the feminine when you get your gender straight. He hated her without a cause. He simply had too much pride. My heart is sore pained within me, and the terrors of death are fallen upon me. And she says, you take me with the strength of your hand, and you hold me up. And she says, you will no longer hear my complaints. You won't listen to anything I have to say. And she's talking to Adam, who is called God there in that chapter. But it was clearly man that was doing this to her. She says, my garment hugs me like dirt, like mud. It now clings to me. They had actually managed to alter her form so that they could truly tear her right down. My heart is sore pained within me, and the terrors of death are fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. And I said, oh, that I had the wings like a dove. This is she, the Holy One, speaking. For then would I fly away, and I would be at rest. She didn't want to have to stay here and bear this burden and the deliverance of the children. She was absolutely humiliated in this passage. Lo, then I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and the tempest. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their tongues, for I have seen violence and strife in the city. So, we can look at that in a lot of different ways, but because we are supposed to be in wisdom, we're going to just kind of bolt down through this. Day and night they go about it upon the walls there of mischief, also in sorrow are in the midst. So let's just backtrack here just one right quick. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their tongues, for I have seen violence and strife in the city. We see the Shulamite actually going out through the gateway because she's the key of David. She's the only one that can actually open the gate or close the gate. He didn't even try to open the gate. He knew he had to wait for her to open the gate when he reached his hand in. So we know she's the key of David, and she's the only one that can deliver. The gateways belong to her. It's a form of deliverance, and it is a symbol of her glory. She is the Shekinah glory. She is the only one that can deliver the children out through the truth. And we see the Shulamite actually going out about the city, and she was looking for her beloved. She was looking for the one who had took her an oath, took her covenant, and said, yes, we'll uphold your law. And she did search for him in the night, in the darkness. She did not find him, and she returns back, right? But she goes about the city, and while she's in the city looking for her true beloved, they beat her up, more or less, right? And that's just that's kind of where we are right now. Day and night they go about it upon the walls thereof, mischief also and sorrow in the midst of the city. So we find that in Song of Songs, and I'm going to actually go look for it, because that just interests me enough to do that. It does. I got to remember where Song of Songs is. Okay. And I can't remember the chapter. I think it's like the ending chapters of Song of Songs, where we find her saying these. Well, I bypassed it there. Well, was that where it was? Okay. What is after this? Okay. So, where does she say it? Right there. It's verse 7 where the city actually comes into play here, the streets, which is what we're looking at. Day and night, they go about it upon the walls thereof, mischief also and sorrow. In the midst of it, wickedness is in the midst thereof, deceit and guile depart not from her streets. And they were her streets. But the guile was not there because of her, and the deceit was not there because of her. It was because he was rejecting her in covenant. So in verse 7 of Song of Songs, chapter 5, she says, the watchmen that went about the city found me. They smote me. They wounded me. And the keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. So the idea is that they made her a harlot, right? And she kept seeking for one that would uphold her covenant. So we do have to bring in the masculine. We bring it in as Joshua. We do not bring it in as an idol of Jesus. I do happen to believe there was a man that represented the righteous son, and that was Joshua, who did die and upheld her covenant. And then we find Jesus with these words of Joshua here and there in his mouth that reasons out with the little book. And he says, you can blaspheme the Son of Man. You can get away with doing it and you'll live. But when he shows up and the Holy One shows up, and he's talking about the one that he's in covenant with, That's who he's talking about. When she shows up, this is your way out of here. This is the law that will preserve you and keep you into eternal life. So, but when they turned on her, we get the men going about the street, right? The watchman that went about the city found me. So we do have the city here, do we not? Yeah. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their tongue, for I have seen violence and strife in the city. So this is the Shulamite speaking in Psalm 55. The watchmen that went about the city found me. They smote me. They wounded me. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. They did, her glory. They took away her glory. And you get reading about Moses, and after he came down from the glory, his face shone so bright. And some says, well, he had horns. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, in old world understanding, the horns described as light. Now understand, when a light shines bright, it'll shoot out horns. Will it not? It will. And Moses was so full of that glory, so bright, that he actually had to put on a veil. We see them ripping her veil off of her, taking her glory away from her. Really. And what they do is they kind of impose all these ideas of glory and light and enlightenment and smartness and wisdom upon a man and totally steal all of her glory away from her when it was her that it belonged to. And so the idea of horns, and you'll get a lot of sculptures, again, these images, man-made idols of men, always men, and they've got images of so-called Moses with horns. Well, horns simply was, in the old world, a way of saying enlightened. He was enlightened. He knew things. And he knew things because he had gone up to the glory herself. So we get the city here in Song of Songs. We absolutely know this is she speaking. It is not a he. And they'll stick a he in the commentary. I'll throw he. I mean, the men are really self-indulgent of self. Day and night they go about it upon the walls thereof. Mischief also and sore are in the midst of it. Wickedness is in the midst thereof. Deceit and guile depart not from her streets. For it was not an enemy that reproached me. Then I could have carried it. Neither was it he that hated me, that did magnify himself against me. Then I would have hid myself from him. But it was you. She said, it was you. Man, mine equal, my guide, and my acquaintance. Now they want to put guide means her superior. No, that's not what it meant. It meant they guided each other's pathways. They helped each other along in this covenant, not the men that we have today who wants to put their hands on the hips and say, you better listen to me, just like these watchmen in the city where deceit runs rampant and smotes her and strikes her like it's her God-given right to put a woman in her place. Oh, wow, aren't you just such a strong, godly man? You are a weakling, and you can't even think. But it was thou, a man mine equal and mine acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together. We took sweet counsel together. We used to have close fellowship. We walked with a crowd into the house of God. So, what did he do? He turned on her. She said, it was you. You turned on me. Let death seize upon them, and let them go down quick into Sheol. For wickedness is in their dwellings and among them. As for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. So if you get down and you just say, well, I'm calling upon him, and I'm calling upon Jesus, and, he's come to get me, and you keep reading this Bible, and you keep reading the male commentary, that's not you calling upon the Lord. That's you calling on man-made religious lies and laws to save you, not on the Spirit. So as for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and she shall hear my voice. She has delivered my soul in peace from the battle that was against me, for there were many with me. And that's the idea that those who turn back to the covenant of God, who makes a sacrifice for God, who keeps the oath of God, that she's going to deliver us into a new body. She hath put forth her hands against such as be at peace. Actually, He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He has broken his covenant, and he did. My friend acts violently against those at peace with him, and he violates his covenant. His buttery words are smooth, but war is in his heart. His words are softer than oil, but they are drawn swords. This kind of takes you back sort of to what Sennacherib says to King Hezekiah. But again, King Hezekiah had smooth words on his tongue too. And she did. She delivered him at that point when he went up and prayed to the God that he actually had been responsible for tearing down all the emblems that had represented her. And we identified 3 of them. And that's found in a video on 8th Day Dawning. If I think to, I'll post the video below here if I can find it. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and she shall sustain thee. The burden that she's sustaining is the deliverance of the children. And she shall sustain thee. She shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. But thou, O God, shall bring them down into the pit of destruction. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days. But I will trust in thee. I trust in wisdom. She's the one that I trust in, and she's the one that without fail, every one of these verses will take you straight back to her. They do. So back to Wisdom 14. Back to my notes. Okay, so we will begin in, and a trap for the feet of the foolish. So the snare they lay for us to fall into, they fall into it themselves, and they do not escape. So the origins and evils of idolatry, this is the title. For the idea of making idols was the beginning of fornication, and the invention of them was the corruption of life. For they did not exist from the beginning, nor will they last forever. So God says, you saw no image of me, you make no image of me, neither male nor female. You follow my way, but I've also told you the way comes off of my daughter's tongue. I didn't tell you to bow down and worship them. I don't tell you to make an idol in their image, but I certainly don't tell you to make a male idol either. For they did not exist from the beginning, nor will they last forever. For through human vanity, vainness, the vain traditions of men is what it says in Isaiah 29. You bow down to me and you don't even know who I am. You denied your creator in the days of your youth. You said you didn't want me. You wanted a king. For through human vanity they entered the world, and therefore their speedy end has been planned. For a father, here we go, with a beginning idol, consumed with grief at an untimely bereavement, made an image of his child who had been suddenly taken from him. You know, that sounds like David's firstborn son that he had with Bathsheba. He mourned greatly, doesn't it? Sort of does. And we still have the issues with saying the key of David and the key of Solomon, but it actually helps us conquer the detail and get to the little book of truth. It does, to keep it in the context that is presented. But we know that David did have a son and that he greatly bereaved the loss of this son. So made an image of his child who had been suddenly taken from him. He now honored as a god what was once a dead human being, and handed on to his dependents secret rites and initiations. These are your feasts, your feast days that God says they are, smoke in my nose, a stink in my nose, your festivals that you created. Then the ungodly custom, grown strong with time, was then kept as a law. You had to keep it. You were forced to keep it as law. Now this takes us to the kings in the book of Daniel yet again. I believe it was Darius who made the decree that nothing would pass as a law by a god unless it was passed through him. You couldn't go to a god. You had to go to him. He was the only one that could ordain. And so we see these kings begin to implement law and festivals and the ordination saying that, well, you got to keep this because this human being has now become a god. And we see every king's name in the Old Testament leads straight up to a king who wanted to be a god, right? So these become Old Testament gods. And when you follow out, you realize it's the kings playing God. Then the ungodly custom, grown strong with time, was kept as a law, and at the command of monarchs, carved images were worshipped, still doing it today. When people could not honor monarchs in their presence since they lived at a distance, they imagined their appearance far away. And we get this in Daniel. We get this in Daniel. And made a visible image of the king. See, it's always a king. It's always themselves, males, gods, that are doing this, whom they honored, so that by their zeal they might flatter the absent one as though present. Then, watch this. This is where it really begins to take hold. So let me backtrack briefly to verse 13, and we'll pick up what I wrote here. So verse 13, for they did not exist from the beginning, nor will they last forever. So male idols that imitate the true God. Fornication, its male idols are in view. So who fornicated? Right? For the idea of making idol was the beginning of fornication. And the invention of them was the corruption of life. So who made these idols? Who made these images? It keeps telling us it was men, men, men. So who fornicated in the beginning if it wasn't Adam? So male idols that imitate the true God. They were fornicating. They were turning from her covenant, and they were turning to a God that the original fathers and original mothers knew not. And we're told that in Malachi chapter 2 again. It says, let me see. Let's read it. Malachi 2. If I can get there. You fall. Okay, so Malachi 2. What does it say? Malachi 2. I can find the verse. Yeah, I like this verse, verse 3. Behold, I will corrupt your seed and spread dung upon your faces. That's Baal, Lord of dung. Even the dung of your solemn feasts that you made, you created, and one shall take you away with it. But what does God say? Speaks of the law of truth was in her mouth, and iniquity was not found in her lips. They got he again. She walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. So where is it? Have we not all one mother, not father? It's mother that we all have one. Against her firstborn. Judah had dealt treacherously. This is verse 11, Malachi 2. Judah has dealt treacherously, and abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem, for Judah has profaned the holiness of the Lord, the Holy One, that they blasphemed. They profaned the holiness of the Lord, which she loved. And they have married the daughter of a strange god. Who committed fornication? Who committed fornication by creating male gods, saying he, and getting woman down at the feet, and then married the daughter of a strange god that the original God from the beginning knew not of? And that it has really no power but the power to manipulate and lie. So there we see that. So these male idol gods were not from the beginning. So for they did not exist from the beginning, nor will they last forever. So we see it was a slow turning through history. Let me see. So then, now we begin in 18. Actually, we can read again 14, verse 14, what I have. Vainglory, they were seeking their own glory and worship. How male images of God entered into the world. We see how it all began to form. Verse 9, they hated the presence of God, called God, which was the daughter of Zion, called the Holy One, and they blaspheme her holy name. And it states in 1 Kings 19, it says, the daughter of Zion has shaken her head at thee. Who have you blasphemed? You have blasphemed the Holy One of Israel, and you turned away from her covenant, and you married the daughter of a strange god when you began to make male images and claimed they were your gods. So anyway, that's how it all ties in. Surely you can reason out what I'm saying. I've got enough videos up. So then with ambition of the artisan impelled, even those who did not know the king, to intensify their worship. This is verse 18, Wisdom chapter 14. So for he, perhaps wishing to please his ruler, skillfully forced the likeness to take more beautiful form. Yeah, I'm sure they began to write poetry, perhaps even psalms to it, bringing more beauty unto this idol. And the multitude, attracted by the charm of his work, now regard it as an object of worship, the one whom shortly before they had honored as a human being. And this became a hidden trap, a snare for mankind. Because people in bondage to misfortune or to royal authority bestowed the objects of stone or wood the name that ought not to be shared, God. So it's saying these kings who were just images of human beings then took on the name of God. Because people in bondage to misfortune or to royal authority bestowed on objects of stone or wood the name that ought not to be shared. They were stroking his ego. Oh, yeah. Verse 22. Do I have any more on it? Yeah, I do. 16. Again, what did 16 say? So it shows us a progressive series of steps of how this male idol might have entered our world. This is one of many avenues that it could have taken, and I think it did take. Okay, now I want to make sure not to miss this part. Right there. Yeah, we did miss it, so let's backtrack. Because this was one in particular that led me to a verse that we find in Hebrews 1. So I'll get this up first and then we'll go back. Okay. Hebrews 1. Parallel. I'll get that chapter up. And then we'll go back to the verse that we want to look at in this version that I have before me. So, come on. Oh, I'm doing that. I've got to do this, I think. Yeah. There. Oh, come on. Okay. The supremacy of the Son. Yeah. Man, write that in there. You're equal in God's eyes. One's not more precious than the other to a mother. Or rightfully so, nor to a father. We go back to, we'll go back a little bit here. So when people could not honor monarchs in their presence since they lived at a distance, they imagined their appearance far away and made a visible image of the king whom they honored, so that by the zeal they might flatter the absent one as though present. So what does it say here in verse 17 that led me to a verse in the King James? So, whom men could not honor in presence because they dwelt far off, they took the counterfeit of his visage from far and made, what does it say? An express image of a king whom they honored, to the end that by this their forwardness they might flatter him that was absent as if he were present. So flattery is all about it. Flattery. So where do we find the express image? Hebrews 1. Hebrews 1. Who being the brightness of his glory, as Father's glory, and the express image of his person. There we go, the express image. You see how we borrow terminology all over the place? And there's more than that in there. But this one just really hit me strong, the express image, because there was one of the guys who used to stand up every week and repeat this verse and repeat this verse. And it was just like going, look at me, I'm a man. I can't believe I had the luck to be born a man. You poor girls. We're the express image. He was the express image of Father. Look at me. I'm a male. And then we see how these lies come into play. Who being the brightness of his growing express image, and I'm sure some will now make this comment under videos, they just love to mock, and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sin, called the bride, the woman, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high. Really? This is an express image. Look at that. That's just what it says. Just what it says. So, yeah. So, again, we backtrack to 16 here. Then the ungodly custom, grown strong with time, was kept as a law, and at the command of monarchs, carved images were worshipped. So in Daniel 2 to Daniel 6, you really should go in and study what is said there, because this is all wrapped up in what is being said here. We get also Esther 2, the king made a decree that all women would bow to Baal. Well, if that ain't bowing to an image and an idol, the express image of a man who's made in his father's image, who is really just a form created by man, that he began to pray to and forget the one that he was in oath with to uphold her covenant with, and how that has really brought him down into the grave, then he just don't care. And then we also see Darius, I believe in Daniel 6, who makes all these decrees as if he's God, as if he's a God. In verse 17, express image takes us to Hebrews 1:3, who being the brightness of his glory. That's vain glory seekers seeking their own exaltation and worship in the express image of his Father, person, and upholding all things by the word of his power. And power here is 14:11. When he had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of majesty on high. Because, a man can purge the sins of his bride because he's pure and she's not. But he is, after all, made in the express image, identical image of his daddy. Toot, 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 toot. But they denied her covenant. Yeah, so they could make their images. So we will proceed down to 22. So we're going to go to verse 22. So we do have something on verse 22. Then it was not enough for them to err about the knowledge of God, but though living in great strife due to ignorance, they call such great evils peace. I love that. I just love that. They call evil peace, right? So, where was that? Verse 22. So it does state, it says, in the great war of ignorance. So let's use this version here. This is, another one that we want to use. So we'll begin at verse 21 in this version. It says, and this was an occasion to deceive the world, for men serving either calamity or tyranny did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. So the Jews will say Yahweh, and they won't dare say the whole name because they're not allowed to say, and they stick the he pronoun, although they weren't to say that, but they do, and call it the incommunicable name of God. And then we go, moreover, this was not enough for them that they erred in the knowledge, because the name was very communicable. Her name was Wisdom, and her name was Mother and Creator. Yeah, it was very communicable. She was here on earth with you, known as the presence of God on earth, to teach you the laws of heaven that would keep you alive. Erred in the knowledge of God, but whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues called they peace. So the plague that break in upon the nation of Israel, we are told, was Baal worship, idol worship. So Balaam told Balak, go get the women, send them into the men. These are your serpents coming in. So one of the symbols that represents the divine feminine is the great physician symbol, the great healer. the serpent, which represent the wise women in the nation of Israel, and the scepter that serpent was wrapped around, and told those men who had actually bought in to what these women that Balaam and Balak had sent in, and said, hey, you don't have to listen to their law. You can write your own laws, boys. You can do whatever you want. We'll build you up. We'll help you right along with that. And so God says, well, if you're stupid enough to do that and you get big, but if you change your mind and you want to look to this scepter, my true scepter, you will live. You see? So you see how it gets fuller and fuller as we come, understand the full end of what we're looking at being described in the word in allegories. And they don't want to understand because, I got no backing. I'm not a rich man on the pulpit. I'm not highly educated. And yet God says, I will use the weak things of this world to confound the mighty, to confound those with mighty minds, or so they think. But she says it's really those who will upkeep my covenant, who have made a sacrifice with me to uphold that covenant. So women make love out of hate. That's really what they do in this world. They try and they try and they have tried for a very long time to make love out of hate. And it is absolute hatred. And we're told he hated her without a cause. And it seems to become completely embedded right into the genetic makeup of a man. That's just how bad and deep it goes. It's a very strong individual that can turn away from this idol. So we have in the Great War of Ignorance, those so-called great plagues, Baal break in upon them, which was idol worship of man as God, and utter hatred towards the wise women and the daughter Zion herself, called the right hand in the presence of God, called they peace. Jeremiah says, peace, peace to the daughter when there was no peace. Psalm 106:29. Thus they provoked her, not him, to anger with their inventions. Verse 28. And they joined themselves unto Baal Peor and ate the sacrifices of the dead. That is Jesus worship. You can say what you want. And the plague break in upon them. Idol worship. So you come at it from a multitude of angles. God will tell you what you are found, why you are found in transgression, why you are found to be a sinner. Okay. So, okay. So, 1 second. We'll keep reading here. Oh, okay. I like that. Great there. Okay, so we have that up. So we will go back to Wisdom 14 and pick it up. So we'll pick it up in 22 again. Then it was not enough for them to err about the knowledge of God, but though living in great strife due to ignorance, so we're living in great strife today due to our absolute ignorance of God, they call such great evils peace, and they do. Yeah. And they're so indoctrinated with this lie that they're willing to act it out. They're willing to pretend in the lie. And it is so palpable at times from some of them, just what pretenders they are. There's no truth in them. They really don't want to understand the truth. They really don't care about the truth. They don't care about fairness. They don't care about equity. And they certainly don't care about the oath that they did make to her, to God. 23, for whether they kill children in their initiations or celebrate secret mysteries or hold frenzied revels with strange customs. That is what they do today. They no longer keep either their lives or their marriages pure, but they either treacherously kill one another or grieve one another by adultery, and they do. So, let's read this here. That was verse. Oh, my book turned. Yeah, it says, so that there reign in all men, so that there reigned in all men. And this is what I was saying. It seems like it's embedded right in your genetic code now. It says, so that there reigned in all men without exception blood, manslaughter, theft, and dissimulation. So I was actually looking up the word dissimulation. Corruption, unfaithfulness, tumult, and perjury. He perjured himself in the courts of heaven when he said he was upholding her covenant. He is not upholding her covenant. He's upholding his own covenant. He turned on her covenant, and then he says, oh yeah, he's either absolutely lying, saying, no, I'm upholding her covenant. This is the covenant she wants, right? Or he's outright lying and saying, yeah, I'm following her righteous covenant, which he's certainly not doing. He's not doing either of those things. He's not upholding the one that she wanted to teach him and came to teach him. He turned on her, stabbed her in the back. So then he's found to perjure himself. He's lying about the whole situation. And to speak the truth does not mean to slander. To speak the truth means that you're speaking the truth as a witness in this case. So dissimulation here, it says in verse 25. Did I read all of that? They no longer kept their lives or their marriages pure, but they either treacherously kill one another or grieve one another by adultery. And all is a raging riot of blood and murder, theft, deceit, corruption, faithlessness, tumult, perjury. So they have the word here, I like this word, dissimulation. And to define it, it means concealment of one's thoughts, feelings, or character, a pretense. And that's where his mouth, the words on his tongue, is like smooth as butter, but war was in his heart, and swords, he had swords in his heart, it says. I can't remember the exact rendering of that verse, but that the swords were there. He was ready to fight her. And it says, they ripped the garment, that's the glory, off of these daughters as they passed by securely as if they were men at war, and they were men at war. They absolutely hated her. They had too much pride. It was pride. It was arrogance. So, 24, they no longer keep either their lives or their marriages pure, but they either treacherously kill one another or grieve one another by adultery. And all is a raging riot of blood and murder. That's what the world is today. Theft and deceit, corruption, faithlessness, tumult, perjury, confusion over what is good, forgetfulness of favors, defiling of souls, and sexual perversion, disorder in marriages, adultery, and debauchery. For the worship of idols not to be named is the beginning and cause and end of every evil. It wipes you right out of existence, don't you know? Which is what she says to him. She says, the burden of the Lord, the burden of the Lord. But then she promises some, I can't remember the chapter. She says, every man's sword, word, religion would turn on one another, and you will wipe yourselves completely out of existence. And the day that you turn from my truth, and you turn to idols, and to your own idea of religion, and he's got his, and he's got his, and he's got his, and you're all right when you're all wrong. But it's going to lead, is the beginning and cause and end of every evil. For their worshippers either rave in exaltation or prophesy lies, or live unrighteously or readily commit perjury. That's a big one. They're committing perjury in the courts of heaven. They denied her covenant, and they do not uphold her law in the land. They write it for her and then say, oh no, we're upholding it. She wants to, go along with us. And with the whim of Shor, we had agreement. But that was after he stabbed her in the back. For because they trust in lifeless idols, they swear wicked oaths and expect to suffer no harm. Is that not religion today? Especially Christianity. But just penalties will overtake them on 2 counts. Because they thought wrongly about God and devoting themselves to idols, and because in deceit they swore unrighteously through contempt for holiness. She says, you blaspheme my holy name. Right. The children have come to the birth, and there is not strength to deliver. Reason it out what that means. You blasphemed the women, who were the ones who could deliver you into righteousness, and you didn't want them in covenant. For it is not the power of the things by which people swear, but the just penalty for those who sin, that always pursues the transgression of the unrighteous. For those who sin. So God says, it's more or less, I'll send my judges in and they will judge you. But the just penalty for those who sin, that always pursues the transgression of the unrighteous. For it is not the power of the things by which people swear, but the just penalty for those who sin, that always pursues the transgression of the unrighteous. Okay, so that's our 13 and 14. Okay. Okay, so there's my notes for 15. So, you know what? I'm gonna take a little break. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna shut my camera off. I'm gonna take a little break here. And I'm gonna come right back and I'm going to do the study in the follow-up 2 chapters. Okay? So thanks for watching. I pray the Lord blesses you with an abundance of truth. And I hope you all have a lovely day. And thanks again.